Welcome back to Straight Talk. This week, Congress passed a funding bill to reopen the government after being shut down for more than 40 days. It was the longest shutdown in American history. Now, the bill was signed into law by President Donald Trump on Wednesday, staving off another budget battle for a couple of months. Now, the bill had support of only 8 Senate Democrats and just 6 Democrats in the House. All but one of the Democratic lawmakers from Oregon and Washington opposed the bill, including Representative Maxine Dexter. Congressman Dexter joins us now from Washington, D.C. to talk more about why she voted no and what's next. Representative Dexter, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Stephanie. It's good to see you.
Good to see you as well. First, let's talk about what is and isn't in this bill that just passed.
Absolutely. What isn't in it is protection for Americans from the lack of affordability, their lack of access to health care. There was absolutely nothing done to address the affordability crisis that each and every American is feeling right now. What was in it? Perpetuation of tax cuts for billionaires. It does fund SNAP, and that is done for the year. We will not have that readdressed in January, which is extremely important. It funds legislation and the branch of the legislative government, which is important, and VA benefits. What is importantly taken out of veterans benefits was the toxic exposure fund. It was $57 billion that was put in for veterans to have access to the PACT Act, which was intended to give relief to people who had exposures during their times of service. That was taken out to, again, perpetuate tax cuts for billionaires.
Why did you vote no on this bill?
It does nothing to help the people in my district who are looking at 200, 300% increases in their healthcare premiums. It is a tragedy and a failure of leadership that we did nothing to address it.
So your Washington colleague, Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez, was one of only a handful of Democrats who broke from their party to pass this bill and reopen the government. In a statement, she said, quote, "The fight to stop runaway health insurance premiums won't be won by holding hungry Americans hostage. Americans can't afford for their representatives to get so caught up in landing a partisan win that they abandon their obligation to come together to solve the urgent problems that our nation faces." Do you feel like Congress was losing sight of the goal and the most important goals to land a partisan win?
No, I 100% disagree with that sentiment. What we were fighting for is affordability. And Donald Trump unlawfully used SNAP benefits as a cruel pain point for Americans to misguide them into thinking that somehow that's what the shutdown did. That contingency fund was there. We are and will continue to fight for every American to have access to health care they can afford, a government they can trust, and the ability to work hard and play by the rules and actually not just struggle to survive, but thrive.
Did you hear from constituents during this shutdown about wanting this to just end? Or what did you hear from people?
We actually just went over in our team meeting all of the outreach that we had. Shutting down, the only thing we heard from our constituents is to hold the line, keep fighting, do not give in. There's no question that my district overwhelmingly wanted me to hold on with the government shutdown to get them the relief they need on their healthcare premiums.
So let's talk more about the Affordable Care Act's tax credits. Without these credits, what will this mean for people? Of course, this was a huge sticking point and the reason for the shutdown. What will this mean for Oregonians?
Yeah, we all have seen the increases in healthcare premiums. That is across the board, in the high 20% for some healthcare insurers. There's absolutely no relief where the premium tax credits in the past made sure that people weren't overpaying out of proportion to their income, and they already were. Like the ceiling was too high already, but that's been removed. So there is no safety net for people. So some folks will decide they just can't afford their healthcare premiums. What I know is people don't stop getting sick. If they are uninsured, what they do is they delay care so that they can pay rent. They don't come in for their cancer screening so that they can make sure their children are fed. And what that does is it makes them present sicker It costs them more, sometimes putting them into bankruptcy, which again, that is now not precluded by this cruel administration. And then they go into bankruptcy over what could have been prevented with just upstream preventative primary care.
What would you say to viewers or people who feel like the government shouldn't be paying for these subsidies? What would you tell them?
Yeah, I would say I don't disagree that there is inflation in premium costs as a result of these tax credits. We know that that happens when subsidies are used. What these subsidies do right now is make sure people are insured. That is our first priority. Government's job is to maintain and advocate and do everything we can for the health and safety of our people. Insurance companies and how much revenue they make is egregious. It's tragic. We need to do something about it, but we can't leave people without insurance completely exposed while Congress, let's be honest, we don't get things done quickly. It could take years. So we've got to hold ourselves accountable to the people to stop healthcare and the healthcare insurers, pharmaceutical companies, others from making profits off of the pain and the suffering of Americans. Our healthcare system needs reform without question, but we have to keep people safe and covered while we do that work.
So the Senate Majority Leader John Thune has said there will be a mid-December vote on this issue. Do you think there's a chance that things will change in the coming weeks as far as getting this passed?
A pinky promise is easy to break, and we know that our Senate and House Republican colleagues aren't always the most true to their word. So there's a lot of concern. But believe me, we are going to do everything we can to hold them to this promise. The American people heard it. They are going to be paying those premiums in January. They're going to be feeling it, and it is our job to make sure they follow through.
So 1 in 6 Oregonians, of course, relies on SNAP benefits. This was a huge shocker. Many people had to turn to food banks. It was such a big issue to get support for food during November. Now, the shutdown has seemed to highlight really the huge number of people who rely on the government to help them feed themselves. What was your takeaway from that, and what do you think should be done really to help people more in the long run with this?
Look, food security and housing security should be something that every American knows is their future. There shouldn't be any question about that. The fact that we are a disproportionate utilizer of SNAP benefits means that the cost of living in Oregon is too damn high, and government hasn't done enough to make sure that lives are affordable. Oregonians are working hard. They are struggling just to pay the bills, and we are not doing our jobs, making sure that they have the livelihoods that they can pay the bills with, the training programs, the apprenticeships, the education affordability that they need. We have a lot of work to do in Oregon without question. And the fact that so many families in our state were fearful, even terrified that they wouldn't be able to feed their children is not just a policy failure, it is a moral failure.
So we know this is a short-term fix and Congress must pass another funding package in January. Are you concerned that there could be another shutdown at that time?
This is it is such a failure that we keep writing off these cliffs. It is our job to come together, to get to the table, to make some bipartisan policy that actually works. And I am committed. People don't trust each other right now. We've got to break that down. Like, what divides Democrats and Republicans isn't very much. We all want our communities to be safe. We all want our communities to be fed and housed. And whether, it is bending the knee to Donald Trump or the fear of being primaried that keeps my Republican colleagues from coming to the table, their people are suffering just as much as mine are, and we owe it to them to make sure there's not another shutdown.
What do you think needs to be done, though, to rebuild that trust and help this working together in Congress across the aisle?
Yeah, what I've learned being a physician and sitting with people in times of great stress and vulnerability is that trust is earned. You can't demand it. You can't expect it. You have to give something and make yourself vulnerable to get something from the other side. And so that trust has absolutely evaporated. in DC for years and years, and we are leaving the American people behind by not doing everything we can to rebuild it. And I absolutely am committed to it. Some people get frustrated when I say we need to work together. Government doesn't work unless we work together.
We only have about 30 seconds, but I want to ask you, because we're beginning to see now bipartisan support for the Justice Department to release more files and information regarding Jeffrey Epstein. What does that say to you?
Well, it certainly is a great opportunity to work across the aisle in the direction the American people are demanding. Our government has corruption without question in it. We need to demand accountability and transparency and hold ourselves accountable. But most importantly, right now, is that Donald Trump is clearly implicated. Many people across our country or across the world in positions of power are implicated. We must release the Epstein files and give light to what these women, these girls were put through. They deserve to be vindicated and honored for the tremendous pain that they were put through. It is shameful. I am a mother. Nobody wants their children to have to go through that. And the fact that these men in power were letting this happen is something we all need to demand answers for.
Congresswoman Dexter, thanks so much for your time today. We appreciate it. And thank you so much for watching. As a reminder, you can stream Straight Talk on your own schedule. You can download the free TV app, KHW+. We'll see you back here next week.